We're talking about 4 communication breakdowns that can stall momentum in your church. Here we go on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Here I am, and here we go, Scott.
Talking about church communication today, my friend.
Yeah, it's communication is good. Communicating clearly, Scott, is good. And we've dealt with a lot of churches and organizations that missed the mark here.
Yeah, I think it's easy. I was actually just leading a training yesterday with some leaders, and we were talking a little bit about communication and how easy it is to feel like, we've communicated clearly on something, or we've communicated enough. And it's just very, almost impossible, I think, to over-communicate on things that are important, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But communication is so essential for everything from making sure people understand the truth about God's word to, people getting involved in the things that are most substantial for their spiritual growth and development to people understanding the vision and direction of your church. So at the heart of it, communication.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure we'll probably get into some examples and things that we've seen as we go. Let's just go ahead and jump in. We got 4 things to cover today, and we'll try to communicate as clearly and efficiently as we can to not keep you too long on this episode. So the first breakdown we're going to talk about is over communicating everything. I guess maybe everything is even an unnecessary word to add to that. Over communicating. One of the first, or maybe one of the most visible places that we see this could be in your church, the slides, the pre-roll that's happening before your Sunday service starts. If you've got screens in your church and maybe you put lyrics up there or even a camera view, and you're running things, you're running information up there. Everything communicates something, Scott, we would say, even to most churches. Even looking at what's hanging on the walls in your church, or, the look of things, everything communicates something. But the slides on Sunday morning are definitely communicating something. And if you've got 20 of them loaded up in that slide deck, and it takes, 10 minutes even to get through everything that's being said up there before you sit there and see that it started over again. This is assuming you've gotten to church not on time, but maybe even a little bit early. So the people that are always late to church, they have no idea what you're communicating up there.
They've not been communicated with.
We'll talk about that later, with mediums to use, perhaps. But yeah, if we have a ton of things up there, that's just becoming noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to have a plan. We have to have a structure to prioritize information, know what is the most important, who's the most important people to hear that information or see it, and then filter that out. Because if everything is important, you know what they say, Scott, then nothing is important.
Yep.
And this is one of those places that this happens. There's a lot of places this could happen. Your social media, email, newsletters, things that you post elsewhere. And so, yeah, we've got to be clear about who needs to hear this, when, and how often.
Yeah, I think that at the core of it is, I know I said a few minutes ago, kind of in the intro to this episode, that it's almost impossible to over communicate, but and that's true. I think when it comes to the things that are really important and that you want people to really, really know, but if we don't have the discipline to discern or to divide or to filter that which is important, truly important, from that which is not as important, then everything just comes through at the same volume. And that's maybe the issue, is not so much over communication as just the volume. If everything is really, really loud, it's hard to hear the different notes. And the irony is that when you balance those notes properly, then actually you begin to hear everything a little bit better, even the things that are less important, because they're at the appropriate volume for what it is. And so taking the time to limit your communication priorities, taking the time to think through what is the correct volume. Is this a stage thing? Is this not a stage thing? Is this an email? And we're going to talk more about that later, but just understanding what is the correct volume for what this thing is. And I think the leadership challenge on the back end of that is pastorally dealing with how the people who run those programs or ministries feel about how you've communicated their thing. One of the reasons why I think that we communicate everything at the same volume is because Sally came up to us and said, please announce this baby shower from the stage. And you don't want to upset Sally. And so you do that. But you're sabotaging, you're hamstringing those things which are really important because you're putting at the same volume Sally's wedding shower or baby shower, whatever that she's throwing. So thinking through that and being thoughtful and being intentional about what you're going to communicate loudly versus what you're going to communicate softly is extremely important, which is actually maybe a good segue to the second thing.
Yeah, because the second breakdown that we might find is an under communication issue, and it could reveal itself, I suppose, in a variety of ways. Sometimes things are not communicated often enough or clearly enough or even at all under an assumption that people know, and which is probably one of the more dangerous places to be in. If you assume somebody else knows something that you know, then you're already starting off in a bad position. That
Yeah.
that right there is a significant communication breakdown. And so we have to, again, we should be running through the same set of filters. Like, who needs to know this? When do they need to know it? How often do I expect they're going to have to hear it to achieve whatever action I want them from it? But sometimes you just need to, and I'm kind of even going beyond, like, we're sort of going down this road of maybe events, signups for things, which is important. I mean, there's a lot of that happens in the church, but even communicating a thing that's maybe not even public, just people communicating clearly with one another, not necessarily what we're going for in this episode, but I mean, I've recently had an experience where people thought the others had the same understanding about something and when you're under that assumption, like, they see things the way I do, and then this frustration develops, like, how come we're not getting the right result? How come we're not? And then you have to, like, go down, like, oh, we don't both have the exact same assumption or knowledge or understanding. You've got to reset and found where do we have shared information, and now let's go to the next level.
Right.
And so, but this is definitely under that heading of, I think they know what I know, therefore I don't need to say anything. And that's, you got to, as a leaders, I mean, this is a leadership issue. We've got to make sure that we don't get into that position.
Yeah, I think as it relates to things that we maybe under communicate and making some assumptions about the things that people know, I think one of the biggest areas where this shows up is as it relates to those core functions or those regular ongoing ministries that are our primary ministries in our discipleship pathway. So we might think, well, everybody knows about our life group ministry, or everybody knows about Sunday school, or everybody knows about small groups, or whatever it is. And so you just never talk about them. And then you go, wow, our group's engagement's only at 40% of our average worship attendance or 50% of our average worship attendance. Why aren't people taking that next step? And one of the key reasons why that might be the case is that you're not talking about it nearly enough. And so people do show up to the one-off things, the sort of popcorn Christianity type things that are easy to digest, because those are the things that you talk about because they're timely. And you're not spending time talking about the things that are ongoing, but they're more substantial. And so taking the time to think and don't make these assumptions that everybody knows how to get connected into groups, everybody knows how to take their next best step. You should assume that they don't. And whenever you start to get complaints from your existing folks or your established folks, and they say, hey, why are we talking about groups every single week? Or why are we talking about, whatever it is, whatever primary ministry it is? We know. You just remind them that announcement's not for you. It's for the people who don't know. Because every week, Lord willing, there are going to be people sitting out there who actually don't know. And they need to hear it. And they need to hear that more loudly than movie night on the lawn. And so I think this is maybe the biggest issue. As it relates to under communication, I think this is where it shows up the most frequently.
I agree. And I know we always try to, get churches to move in this direction whenever we're working with them through like strategic envisioning process. Because it's often asked, like when, how do we communicate this, or when should we? And I think, Scott, you and I both have a similar version of whatever this is. But the best time to talk about the next step of your discipleship pathway is in the previous step. And let that just continue down for a little bit of clarity. I mean, when we're talking about discipleship pathway, we always teach 3 to 5 steps for your church, and each of those 3 to 5 steps would have a primary ministry, so that you're asking people, this is what we would like to see you engage in next. And so, yeah, in our worship service on Sunday, we should be talking about what is our next step. It could be Sunday school, could be small groups.
Could be volunteering, there could be any numbers.
Yeah, depending on whatever your next thing is. Yeah. So that's the time. That's what Scott is saying. That's when we should be telling people, hey, this is your next best step. If that was small groups, great. What should we be talking about in our small groups then? Getting people engaged in serving, if that's our next step. Bring that to the small group level and talk about getting engaged in serving. Getting engaged in our outreach, whatever we're doing there. So yeah, you can be strategic about these things. And this, again, I'm going to kind of use the word filter a little bit. Filtering, what should be communicated wherever we are, whatever that situation is, should hopefully align around our discipleship pathway, which is where anything else is going to fall in as well, right, Scott? I mean, if the church picnic is going to live somewhere in a church step, whether it's a valuable event or not. We can't debate that today without knowing what it is, but yeah, everything should be fitting in your discipleship pathway, and leading people through the pathway should be a high priority in communication.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next breakdown, number 3, is different people saying different things. So some inconsistent messaging or messengers. So this happens in different ways, and it's usually again about a lack of understanding. So it could be bad or poor onboarding or training on the front end, or it could be that your church doesn't do a good job of keeping your website up to date. So you hear one thing and then you go, oh, I'll go check the website to get more information. You go on the website, you're getting different information. You'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, the number of times we'll have a meeting with a pastor when we're first starting the process with them, or we're doing like a discovery call with a church or something like that. And I'll be like, oh, well, I've been on your website and I saw your mission is such and such. And they go, oh, well, that's our mission statement from, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. We actually use this thing, but it's not on the website or whatever. Like that really inconsistent messaging. And that's very disorienting for people. It's going to be hard for people. One, they're not going to know the correct information because they don't know which information is correct. And 2, and this is maybe, I think, worse, AJ, is that now you've lost trust with people. If they're getting different answers, they don't know what to believe. And so it's really important that you be consistent and that you cascade those messages down so that people understand a single source of truth. And you know what? We all make mistakes on this. So just clean it up. And if apologies are necessary anywhere for being unclear, make those apologies, but then be diligent, I think, to clear up the communication.
Yeah. I'm kind of seeing this episode in a new light here, Scott. I think our our first 2 topics really are more about the what are we communicating. This one here is about who is doing the communicating, and then our next point, I think we're really going to be talking about the how are we communicating. But So here, I think you're exactly right. I mean, and again, on those first 2 points, I think that's more like discipleship communication mostly. And now we're talking about more of like leadership in the church. I think this is more of a leadership um, thing that is everybody on the same page? I mean, do we know what needs to be communicated, which will help determine who should communicate it? And if we've done the work of understanding our leadership structure and we're having effective meetings and we're working towards goals that are known and understood, then that's going to help drive better messaging and a more consistent voice, or segmenting who says what to, maybe their area of ministry that is more
Mhm.
appropriate. So, yeah, this is another, common issue in churches that haven't necessarily worked through those things, though they've really maybe aligned either paid or volunteer staff and
Yeah.
ministry leaders to know, how do we all work together?
Yeah.
Um, a misunderstanding of that will lead to a misunderstanding of what we're saying about what our church is trying to achieve.
This is like a personal example of something related to our team, but I think it applies here. It's interesting, I think, for you and I both. Now, we have a growing team of guides and people who go out and do this work, and so you and I have the privilege of getting to go and kind of watch our team do the strategic envisioning process with churches and so on. And it's interesting to hear things that you've communicated or tried to communicate from someone else's mouth. Someone else kind of begin to teach those things and use phrases or use examples or whatever. But I think it's also a good gauge for how well have you communicated. When you're
Hmm.
watching someone else communicate something that you've tried to communicate to them, and you're hearing them say it, and you go, "Oh, okay, I think I need to clear up what I'm saying. I think I need to say something better." Now, I mean, maybe someone would have misheard or something, but I don't think that's usually the case. I think usually it's like, "Oh, that's something we need to put in our facilitator guide." Like, I didn't even think about that. That's something that's, um, for me, it's just secondhand. It's just something I say, or it's something I do, or it's something that I communicate when I'm working with the church that I don't even think about. And the same is going to be true in your church. There are things about your church, or there's parts of your vision that are just secondhand to you. You don't even think about them. If someone asks the question, you know immediately. But someone on your team, an elder on your team, a staff person on your team, they might just make up an answer because they don't really know. They were never taught, or they weren't taught clearly. And then you could end up being upset. Well, why did you say this thing? When in reality, you didn't teach them. You never really communicated clearly on that.
Yeah.
And so maybe just as a word of advice, don't always be the one communicating. Find places where you can hear other people on your team communicating things. And then that gives you an opportunity to go, "Oh, I need to clean something up with the
Hmm.
team and communicate better." And if any of my guides are listening, I want you to know I don't have a specific example in mind. I was more of thinking like, it's actually kind of cool. There's more of a positive example in my mind. Like, I've had good experiences with this. Sitting in the room and going, "Oh wow, it's really fun to hear someone else communicating this and it not be coming from my mouth." I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Well, I mean, you and I talked about this just a week or so ago, preparing for our Africa trip coming up,
Yeah.
which is still not yet fully funded. Go to malphursgroup.com/donate to help us get over the final push here on funding for that trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you and I said, I don't know if I want to say this that way. And we talked about it. And in the end, you were like, you know what? Why don't you do that part then? So you can say it however you want to.
You can say however you want.
Which was a fine agreement. So
I wasn't mad about it. I just didn't care.
no, yeah. Okay. All right. So, but when we get there, we will both speak about it. We will not contradict one another
No,
for sure.
no.
Whenever we're there, and we're looking forward to that. All right. Our last one, our fourth breakdown in communication, is wrong medium for the message. So, yeah, this comes down to having a good understanding of, and you might even want to write this down. Not write down what I say. Write it down for your church. what are the ways in which we communicate? List these out, because, and you know
Yeah.
what? Not maybe, you should do this. You should have a list of how we communicate. Those Sunday morning slides. Maybe we print a bulletin. What social media accounts do we have? Um, what do we maintain? Our website? Do we do an email thing? If we do, how often and to whom? So we should have a good understanding of this. And these are all tools. These are all tools in your tool belt. And what needs to get communicated is then up for choice. What is the best tool to use to get this information to the right people and hopefully get whatever reaction we want from them to, everything needs to have a point, I suppose. So if you're just saying stuff just to say things, maybe
Mhm.
just rethink that communication strategy
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Because everything should have some kind of a point. Otherwise, it's noise. I mean, we're all on social media constantly. We've got televisions going and radio and podcasts. And so don't say stuff just to have said stuff. Say something that hopefully will, move the needle on discipleship or convey important information to the right
Yep.
people.
Yeah. And as you kind of said, think through targeted communication. So, give more detail to the people who need the most detail and give less detail to people who don't need it, or none, don't even share it at all. Uh, the the senior saints in your church don't need to know about the youth retreat, all the details. Here's the packing list for the youth retreat. The senior adults don't need that information. And so, some things are going to go out to everybody, even if they're kind of directed at a particular audience. But like that, there is a youth retreat going on. Maybe you do want to make an announcement about that, because maybe there are grandparents who have grandkids that don't go to the church. They want to invite them to sign up. So some level of communication broadly might be fine, but then the deeper you go, you want to have that more targeted, and creating a matrix for that where you can think through, what is this thing that we're trying to communicate, and what is the best medium or method for being able to do that? We used to have, at a church I was last on staff at, I created like a little workflow almost, kind of. Is it like a decision tree? What is this event? Is it this or this? Yes. Is it this or this? Yes. Is it this or this? And by the time you get to the bottom, you're able to see, okay, here's the appropriate means of communication. And it's not hard to build something like that. You could use ChatGPT or something to probably help you build something like that in about 5 minutes. One thing, though, that I would like to mention before we start wrapping this up is inside the Healthy Churches Toolkit, we have tools to help you with communication. We have a communication assistant built in where you can give some general information about what it is that you need to communicate, and it's going to create for you like a newsletter, email newsletter, caption, and some social media posts, and some text message stuff that you could send out, and some little blurb for your bulletin. And you can move those things into whatever other tools you're using, or you can sync up your social media accounts with the toolkit and be able to post directly out of the toolkit for that. So we've created some tools to help you communicate better as well, because we know how important communication is. So if you want to check some of that stuff out, go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, sign up free for 7 days.
That's a
How's that
great
for
idea.
working in an ad?
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. Communicating clearly in the church. Hopefully we've convinced you it's a good idea, given you a few things that you can look at. If you want to ask some more questions about this, chat about it. Well, if you're on YouTube, you can certainly comment below. We'd love to hear your questions, or maybe some things that you have found that were successful in your church. Otherwise, you can also email us, leadership@malphursgroup.com. Open up a conversation there. If you feel like you need some help on some of the foundational things, leadership structure, strategic planning in your church, Scott and I and our team of highly qualified and trained guides would love to connect with your church that way. And you can do that at malphursgroup.com. Thanks for being with us on this episode of the Church Revitalization Podcast. We'll see you again next week.